Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on leveraging feedback for organizational growth. I'm so happy to see many L&D leaders ready to drive positive change within their organization. And you are indeed the superheroes of the corporate world. I am Ishita Mukherjee from Team GwS Satori, and our mission is to make workplaces better for people, teams, and organizations by enabling self-discovery, empowering individuals, and enabling communities. Now, before we dive into today's session, just a few housekeeping notes. This webinar will be recorded, and hence I will request you, so no swiping through Instagram because we will know that. Also, we encourage you to keep your cameras on because seeing your lovely faces makes the session more engaging and keeps us on our toes. We have some exciting announcements too. So check out our upcoming programs designed to support you on your personal and professional journey. We will share the links and a festive discount, especially for you, with a gift card offering you a flat 20% off on all our upcoming programs, learning journeys, and session recordings. You will find the message in the chat box now. Call it our way of saying happy festivities and may your journey be joyful and bright. Now, here's a sneak peek to our upcoming programs. So we have a program called Happiness at Work, which is designed to make your 9 to 5 to thriving and alive. And if you think that interviews are intimidating, then Interview Insight is one workshop that is just for you. We have some learning packages too called Leadership Launchpad, Essentials for First-Time Managers, along with 15 plus session recordings for your personal and professional growth. Now, let's face it, even superheroes, which are the L&D leaders, they also need a good training regime. So here are things for you. Now, let's talk about our Learning Guild. Learning Guild is a visionary platform that tries to empower the L&D leaders with the tools, insights, and connections that they need to excel and drive transformative outcomes within their organizations. And if you think anyone else who you know might benefit with this inspiring and supportive environment, please use the link in the chat below to share it with them because sharing is caring. Today's session, leveraging feedback for organizational growth. Today's feedback, leveraging feedback for organizational growth, perfectly aligns with our mission. And I'm so excited to introduce our guest, Raghav Pandit, to you. Let me read a few things about him. With over 17 years in HR technology, he has significantly influenced employee feedback systems and organizational growth. Raghav has worked with over 100 CHROs and HR leaders to implement strategic solutions that drive results and enhance leadership effectiveness. He is a thought leader passionate about turning feedback into actionable insights that propel organizations forward. In short, he is the feedback guru you did not know you needed. Raghav will share his insights on using real-time employee feedback to boost business growth, leadership effectiveness, and latest trends in AI for the HR leaders. In the last 15 minutes of this session, we are going to dedicate that time for the question and answers. So please write down all your questions or queries that we have for Raghav, and we will address it during that time. So let's start this journey to turn insights into actions for our organizations. Now, I'll turn it over to you, Raghav.
Thank you so much, Ishita, for this. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to GwS Satori's session on organizational surveys, collecting feedbacks, and maximizing a business impact. To start with the session, I would quickly walk you through how the flow of the entire session will go. We will be covering why organizational surveys are important, what types of surveys needs to be done, their frequencies. Now, you can do surveys within your organization if you have that kind of a team, bandwidth, HR VPs, survey champions, or you can outsource it to third-party vendors. Whether you're doing it in-house or third-party, you should know the entire activities within the life cycle of the survey process. Now, focusing more onto the employee engagement and employee satisfaction, I'm going to talk about how they are different, how you should select, whether you are an early stage startup with about 50, 55 employees to as big as a global enterprise with over 6 lakhs plus employees. Also, with each of the survey, whether it's an engagement or a satisfaction survey, what kind of scales you should use. We will run through some of the challenges that organizations do face, irrespective of the employee size or industry when they are running surveys. Then we will talk about how you can effectively use AI, LLMs, chatbots within your survey process, whether you want to do it in-house or again, outsource it to someone, and how you can use various analytical models in combination of the survey results for seeing the progress over the time. At the last, we'll spend some time in terms of knowing your questions, your challenges, and how we can help you in terms of running these surveys effectively. So to start with, as you all are HR leaders, well-read, you can completely understand. So this is the basic establishment saying that multiple studies, research papers state that your organizational surveys are very, very critical in terms of your business growth. The very simple idea is that if you have a happy employee, you will retain your customers. This would lead to your operational efficiencies, that would lead to higher productivity, and you will have lower attrition, absenteeism, and disengaged employees. Some of the numbers that came up from these studies are reflected here, showing what happens to different organizations when they are using organizational surveys in terms of business growth. In very simple terms, it is that you need to listen to your employees, address their concerns in whatever ways it is possible. Now, when these studies come out, they talk about organizational surveys. So what are these organizational surveys? Let's look at the main areas of surveys that an organization can execute to get the employee feedback. The first and the foremost is known as voice of employee. Organizations do say it as employee engagement or an employee satisfaction survey. The ideal time to run this is once in a year, and it is applicable to all employees across the organization, from early joiners to people, those who are about to exit. The second is in terms of 360-degree feedback. People also call it 360 assessment. This is usually for everyone in the organization. My personal recommendation is never ever restricted only to leaders or to managers. You can even include individual contributors to this. The reason is because you come to know about feedbacks, about behavioral traits through multiple sources. The frequency can totally depend on an organization's culture in terms of the career progression of different employees. We have onboarding surveys, which are very, very specific in terms of getting the pulse of what is happening on the onboarding stage. The school of thought here is always for an organization is to keep in mind is to control the early attrition, which is done within the first 3 months or 100 days from a new joiner's date of joining. You can run the survey either at 2 levels, 3 levels, or can go as high as 4 levels, depending on the induction process of your organization. So from the date of joining to the induction, the training, and then the employee joining the shop floor. Keep in mind that should not add too many surveys so that employee does not get a survey fatigue. Similarly, you can have exit surveys, and these exit surveys, my opinion, is to conduct it at 2 different stages. The first stage is when the employee is about to leave. It's at the time of exit. So the employee is serving the notice period. And the second is after the exit of the employee, say 45 to any which way 60 days. The thought here is to have comparison on the kind of feedback and responses they have given. This becomes quite unbiased because when an employee is exiting the organization, they would like to say all the good things. They want to make sure that they have an easy, seamless, and smooth exit. They get all their documentation full and final done. However, once this particular employee moves to another organization and the gap of 45 days to 2 months, 60 days, is for them to do the water testing with their new organization. They may take a break before joining the next organization. They would go through the interview process, or they may join, they may go through induction process. They may see what are the kind of different cultural aspects are there, what are different policies, procedures are there in that organization, and that will help them to compare. You can be very, very tactical using these exit surveys by collecting their personal names, personal email IDs, personal mobile numbers, and even asking for references. You can even tactfully ask questions in the second survey, asking them, would they consider rejoining back? This is something that can tactically work very well. Looking at voice of employees, a similar level of surveys which are not exhaustive are pulse feedback surveys. These are snippets of anywhere starting from 3 to maximum of 10 questions that an organization can run on a quarterly basis. One has to be very, very careful in setting the objective or the goal of these kind of surveys. Is it that you are running a pulse survey as a follow-up to your voice of employees, or whether there are specific initiatives that are being executed in the organization and you want to collect feedback on those? So you have to be, again, very strategic in terms of setting very clear objectives or goals of your pulse survey. Going ahead, we can also look at your environmental, social, and governance survey. These are very, very specific related to manufacturing organizations, those who have these kind of protocols in place. These surveys are usually done once in a year. The last and the most critical are the training feedback surveys. These are important in terms of knowing the retention knowledge, in terms of whatever training is happening, whether it's a first-time training or it's a refresher, forced training that is happening with the employees. Also understanding what are the targeted development areas that you would like to cover. So overall, it helps in your training effectiveness. You can also look at measuring the ROI in case if you have that kind of systems and technology in place, combining the training feedback survey with an assessment, which can be a skill-based assessment on that particular product, domain, or wherever your organization is, as well as taking managers' feedback. Now, these are done at different timelines, and overlapping the scores can actually help you understand the ROI. One of the best models is the Kirkpatrick model, which is a 4-step model. Now, there's this 5th step that has also come in, which is Kirkpatrick-Phillips model. I'll be happy to talk about this model either if we have time on this session, or maybe I can take it separately. Going ahead, I understand organizations want to run surveys seamlessly and smoothly. Over my last 15 years experience working with over 100 plus organizations and implementing surveys, I have seen what are the specific 5 areas a client looks for or an organization looks for. So if you are a vendor, and from a vendor's perspective, you need to make sure that you have relevant experience and you bring objectivity to the entire project, and you have to see it as an end-to-end project. You have to make very, very sure the kind of technology that you are using has to comply with all the policies that are there, not only from a technical perspective, but also in terms of data protection. So this covers your GDPR acts. In India, there's a new act which came in 2023, DPDP Act, needs to be covered up from your technology. The third kind of parameter that a client looks in a vendor, and as a vendor we need to develop, is the resource efficiency. Now, these resources can be anywhere, starting from a UI design to multilingual support to help desk to generate questionnaires in different areas. It comes next to the cost efficiency part. Of course, when you are outsourcing to a third party, you have to see that the costs are fairly relevant and lower, on the lower side, compared to what you would do it internally. The last is the capability of doing multiple and multifold analytics and insights. So if you have data, and this data that comes out of any survey is available in raw format, which is MS Excel or CSV, but does the vendor knows how to translate this data, that raw information, into actionable insights? Are there real-time dashboards available, and so forth? So concluding to this, have a checklist that any organization should look at a vendor. These are the must checks. The first and the foremost is to have an authentic technology platform. Now, this can be a vendor's own in-house technology platform. It can be anything related to a SurveyMonkey, to a CultureMonkey, to MS Forms or Google Forms. The second is in terms of their experience as a vendor, whether they have done similar surveys in similar industries or not, what kind of challenges they know in terms of ground reality and how they have overcome on these challenges, making sure that the entire survey project, if outsourced, should not bring any surprises. And if there are any dynamic challenges that comes, are actually solved instantly. The third parameter as a checklist that a client should look at from a vendor is the capability in terms of doing analytics. Otherwise, though, you can do your analytics in-house by using pivot tables or charts or graphs using Excel. But is there a level ahead of what these analytics can be given by the vendor? So things like group reports, sentiment analysis, subjective comment analysis, and so forth. As we progress in this particular journey of our webinar, I will talk a little more detail when it comes to data insights. And the last part is in terms of customization and resources at the vendor's end. So if it's an outsourced firm, whether they have their own in-house development team or not, in terms of technology, how flexible and customizable the technology is the technology available on cloud computers or not, what kind of bandwidth they can handle, what kind of concurrent users they can handle, how much customization can be done on survey designs. For example, my experience has been that if you do an employee engagement survey and you're outsourcing it to a third party to get the unbiased and actual feedback, real-time feedback, you can have a platform which is completely as per the branding of the vendor. But if you are doing an onboarding survey, a 360 or an exit survey, the survey design in terms of look and feel, the report needs to be customized as per the organization. As well as looking at multilingual support. I understand India is a very, very versatile, dynamic environment. There are a lot of organizations, microfinance, banking, insurance, where multilingual capabilities needs to be developed by the vendor to ensure that the essence of the question, and this is not doing a Google Translate or an AI Translate, it is to be on how the essence of the survey question remains intact and converting it from a base language of English to any Indian vernacular language or even international languages. So this is the minimum checklist that I think a vendor should have or a client should look at in a vendor before finalizing. Going ahead, irrespective whether you are doing survey in-house or you are doing it through a vendor, the survey has an entire cycle divided into 3 different phases. The first phase starts with the pre-survey. Now, whether you are doing an employee engagement survey or a 360, there are specific checks and balances that you need to do to ensure that you get most effective, most efficient, and highest participation rate so that you collect all that feedback. The first and the foremost point, what I see, and organizations do face a very, very big success, is using a very, very strategic and a targeted communication. It is always a top to bottom approach. So whether it's a CHRO's initiative or the managing director's initiative, a targeted and a strategic communication is very important, trickling it down to all the employees across the organization, describing why the survey is getting done, what are you looking for, and how will it impact an employee's engagement. You can also link it to your business goals as well. Now, how do you do this targeted communication? You can have flyers, you can run internal emails. You can also have this as a discussion in your town halls. Following up by appointing certain survey champions. Now, these can be either your right hands who are HR BPs and very well versed with the employees with a very high repo, or it can be your department heads, your managers on floor, and so forth. Also, you need to ensure that your database is ready. So whether you are doing an employee engagement survey, you have a filterized data ready. Now, what I mean by filterized data is having the correct employee names, having their actual email IDs, also making sure that people, those who are on the verge of exit or have exited the system, they do not get the survey. These are very minor things in terms of data cleansing which are required. Now, the reason why I'm saying so is one of my clients that I was working with about a month back tried triggering out the employee engagement survey emails. And out of the entire lot, we got 3%. It was approximately 170 people getting email not delivered. I was very shocked to see that. And we realized that these 170 people have actually exited the organization this year before 31st March. How does it impact? It just impacts your email positivity, the domain score. So you have to be very, very clear that the emails that you are even triggering are very well polished. Going ahead in terms of pre-survey, very specific point is the timing and the incentives related to when are you doing the survey. For example, if you're a bank, never run your survey during the last days and the first week of the month. Very critical. If you are an organization that is into alcohol, I had one of the clients, they are into beverages and alcohol. November, December, January is not a good time. That's the time where maximum parties of New Year's, marriages, and so forth happen. So that's the time where they all are busy in terms of operational efficiencies and on the business. So timing is going to be very, very critical. Now, I'm just focusing right now on employee engagement, but the same goes for 360-degree feedback. Do you want to do a 360-degree feedback at the time of appraisal, before the appraisal, after the appraisal? So you have to be very, very careful on your timing. Also have certain kind of incentives for employees, those who are filling up the survey, non-monetary things. So this can be like gift cards. So if you are doing a survey, for example, employee engagement, any employee or the first set of 100 employees, those who fill up the survey, they get an Amazon gift voucher of 500 rupees. Small things like that makes a difference, motivates the employees that, okay, this is a part of it, part of the process, we need to do it. The last point I'm covering is very, very specific in terms of feedback reports. This is only applicable for 360. I have seen a couple of clients facing challenges when executing 360-degree feedback. They are not sure of how the output report comes out. So you have to look at the kind of competencies that you want to cover, what are the behavioral traits you are going to cover, and you need to have tailored reports before you even run the survey. Following up with this, the reason why I'm saying so is you can actually have group coaching sessions for the participants and the respondents for a 360-degree feedback, just to ensure that everyone is clear of why a 360-degree survey is being done and people can be non-biased, and rather than being a bashing area for giving feedbacks for their managers or leaders. Similarly, following up with the process is what happens during the survey. Ideally, a survey window can anywhere be 3 days to as high as 15 calendar days. 3 days can be for very, very specific surveys like onboarding survey or a pulse feedback. But if you're doing a 360-degree or a voice of employee survey, it can be anywhere starting from 10 calendar days to as high as 15 calendar days, knowing your organization culture and how specifically you have targeted your communication, how strategically you have embedded that communication within your organization. You need to make sure that all the survey champions that are appointed should give maximum accessibility to people to fill up the survey. Now, the survey needs to be very, very simple. User interface should be designed in such a way that it opens on multiple devices, multiple browsers, have features like remedy to internet disconnection. So if I'm filling up a survey which is for about 35 or 40 odd questions, and if something happens with my computer device or an internet connection, I can resume from where it has stopped and not go through the entire cycle of filling up those 30, 35 or 40 questions. Also, these survey champions needs to ensure that the progress is also transparently informed to their leaders, that whether people are filling up the surveys or not. Need to have very, very responsive help desk. I use it very clearly. Technology cannot be trusted all the time. There can be glitches. So as a backup plan, always have a responsive help desk. Either have HRBPs or some survey champions, those who are available to ensure that if any employee is facing issues, technical issues in filling up the survey, can do that. And similarly, if you are outsourcing to an organization, you need to ask them to a vendor that, do you have a help desk team available? What happens if you are running the survey and there is a technical glitch? Who gives the admin support? Who gives the technical help desk? During the survey, please promote that the entire activity is for a constructive feedback. As an organization, we all need to accept what is good, what is bad. We have to digest whatever is coming, but it has to be constructive. Now, once the survey is over, there's a set of activities that are required. I have seen a lot of organizations do not thank their employees after filling up the survey. Once the survey is completed by the participants, a thank you note should be given to people. It needs to acknowledge that they have taken out that time to give their feedback. Time is of the essence. As soon as the survey is completed, you need to make sure that all the findings are consolidated, collected, and are presented to the management, or depending on department heads, whatever the survey that you are conducting for. You need to define and implement a lot of action plans on the outcomes. These outcomes can be related to leaders not performing well. These can be challenges within the organization, which can be related to the work environment. It can be challenges related to that employees want a 5-day work environment and not a 6-day work environment. Make sure that those action plans are noted and then are implemented in the organization. Close all the feedback loops. If there are any specific red areas that are being mentioned, they need to be addressed and the feedback loop needs to be closed. You can also establish benchmarks, and there are different models that are available, which I'm going to talk later in this webinar, where you can actually establish future benchmarks. Let me give you a real-time scenario. One of my clients where I have done an employee engagement survey, leadership was somewhere scored at 78%, which was not even the organizational benchmark. The benchmark was about 82 or 83%, and they were 5% below in terms of the dimension of leadership. So they had to make sure that there is a defined implementation plan in terms of actions that they are going to do for leadership. How they are doing it is defining a 360 feedback for all the leaders, followed by a leadership journey of 6 sessions. And what they're targeting is that in next 1 year's time, they are going to ensure that the gap of that 5%, so 83 and 78, that 5% is covered and they achieve it. Of course, more than 83%, but they need to reach that benchmark. So you need to make sure that activities that are related to post-survey are very, very fundamentally clear and defined. Let me move ahead to the next slide. I just want to check on the time at my watch. And okay. Now, in an organization, you have 2 options when you say voice of employees. Either it's an engagement survey or it's a satisfaction survey. I've been working with a lot of clients, those who say we want to run an employee satisfaction survey. And when we understand the scope of work, why they are doing it, how they want to do it, and so forth, and the kind of attributes or competencies or dimensions they want to cover or themes, we realize that it's actually not a satisfaction survey, it's an engagement survey. So I will talk a little bit about the objectives. These are a few parameters that an organization needs to consider when they are establishing their voice of employee survey. Before I even get into these points, I want to make it very clear that you have to understand there is a difference between an engagement survey and a satisfaction survey. An engagement survey covers depth and it's a long-term area. It's not a quick fix. Engagement surveys are direct impacts on business outcomes. Whereas if you look at the tactical points where a satisfaction survey helps is covering up the base. It just tells whether people are satisfied or not. Your engagement survey would be very, very customized in terms of the dimensions or themes that you want to run and you want to get the feedback on. Whereas your satisfaction survey will be very, very standardized. It will not go more than 25 or maximum 30 questions. And 30, I'm saying is way too much. You look at top 8 dimensions in the organization that you have, 2, maximum 3 questions for every dimension. A3s are 24, 25 questions, maybe 1 subjective, and you're good to go. Whereas an engagement questionnaire will be much more deep dive. I just want to take a break. Want to ask if there are any questions till now.
No, Raghav, good to go.
Thank you, Nishant.
May I ask?
Sure, please, Shanti.
So in the beginning, you said, don't add too many surveys. How do you define too many?
That's a wonderful question, and I'm happy that you asked. Ideally, in an organization, if you are looking for an entire year, 3 surveys are more than enough. You may have 1 onboarding survey, you may have an employee engagement survey, and then you may have the exit survey. These are more than enough. A 360 is completely an add-on. It depends how the career progression of the employee is being mapped in the organization. It is not, I do a lot of 360-degree feedback surveys. However, what I see is that there is a certain element of biasness that is there. I would always recommend to organizations, do a 360-degree feedback. Very good. Attach a psychometric assessment to it. You will come to know much more deeper insights about your managers or leaders or the employee, that why these scores are coming and how they can be improved. But 3 surveys are more than enough. 360 is a complete add-on depending on where the organization is. And I see that Not every organization do 360. They are it's a level of maturity of the organization.
I have one more. I'll hold on till you complete the session.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm moving ahead with this slide. Here I want to give you some examples showing 3 areas. So there are 3 dimensions, how you can actually have your questions done. I'll also cover how AI tools will help you design these kind of questionnaires in the later part of this webinar. But this is how you differentiate your questionnaire between an engagement and a satisfaction. Now, there are a lot of dimensions that are available. So I have a couple of more examples talking about how you can do a survey where you have 8 different dimensions for your organization and how you can have these questions. This is specifically for employee engagement. I move on to the next slide talking about employee satisfaction. Here I've taken a set of a little different 8 dimensions because again, this is more standardized compared to what an employee engagement survey is. And you have a set of questions here. Now, this leads to the next part, which is quite debatable, that if I'm doing employee engagement or if I'm doing employee satisfaction, what kind of scales should I use? That's one of the questions that a lot of my clients have asked me over the years. I want to make it very, very simple and say that you have only 2 formats. In any survey, please do not go with yes or no questions. Have subjective questions, 1, 2, maximum 3. And I'm talking about your voice of employees. But don't have too many subjective questions as well. Now, how do you look at an NPS? And the full form of NPS, not the abbreviation, is a Net Promoter Score. How do you look at this question? It is very, very simple. You want to check on the loyalty and advocacy of your employee. If you look at also from example of how a customer feedback is done, there are questions which says how satisfied you are or how likely are you to refer Indigo, refer Naukri.com, and so forth. So it is all about tracking the or measuring the loyalty and advocacy. Whereas your 5-pointer scale, which is also known as Likert scale, which is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree, is for your journal satisfaction. Now, this can lead to some kind of a debate, but it is very simple. You want to run an employee engagement survey, you use a Likert scale. And within Likert scale, you can have one question talking about how likely are you ready to, or how likely are you to refer X organization to your counterparts or to your colleagues, to your family, to your friends. And you get the advocacy or the loyalty score here. There are certain pros and cons that you can look at. I've mentioned them. With NPS score, it is focusing only on the extreme highs and lows, and there are only the detractor part, which is not covered, which is covered, and the promoters, not the passive. I'll show some calculations on how it is done just to make things easy for you. Whereas your Likert scale is very, very detailed in terms of understanding your overall sentiment. I'll show some heat maps, how it is done, how it is worked down, and so forth. Below are the examples that you can look at on the questions based on different dimensions. If you notice, I have here striked the phrase on a scale of 1 to 10. If you are designing questionnaire from your side, please make sure do not use these phrases on a scale of 1 to 10. The employee can actually see that there is a scale and it says that whether it's a strongly agree or a agree part on from 0 to 10. So please do not mention this. Now let's look at the calculations specifically from an NPS format. How it is calculated. On the scale starting from 1 to 10, you have 3 different categories. Anyone in terms of a participant or a user who has responded with 9 or 10 becomes a promoter. Any participant or a respondent or a user who has scored 7 or 8 or marked 7 or 8 becomes your passive. And anyone, user, respondent, participant mentioning or scoring 0 to 6 becomes your detractor. Now, these are your 3 different categories. So once you have all the responses, you need to first classify these 3 categories. And then all you have to do is just calculate the score by taking out the percentages and subtracting them. Always remember that an NPS is a score and not a percentage. These are the formulas that are available. You can do a Google search, take out these formulas. You can ask your AI tools, and you can get these formulas. Let me show you how a real-time scenario on this would work. I've taken some fictitious numbers, keeping that an organization has got total 500 responses on a particular question, out of which 350 are promoters. So these are the people, those who have marked 9 and 10. Similarly, you have 100 people as passives, and you have 50 detractors. How do you do the calculation to get this score of NPS, which is 60, and the range is always from -100 to +100? And how do you represent it in a form of graph? So this is a screenshot that I have of MS Excel. What you do is you take your counts of 350, 100, and 50, your promoters, passives, detractors. You calculate the percentage so that you can get the graph. So 350 divided by total number of responses, which is 500, divided by 100 to get the percentage. You get your 70%. Similarly, for passives, you get your 20%. And then for detractors, you get your 10%. All you have to do is -70 -10, and it's the score, and you can have a graph. You can either make a pie chart if you want, but I think this graph looks more easy and easy to digest. Moving ahead is a time to take a poll. May I request my colleague Ishita to do a poll, please?
Sure, Raghav. Participants, you would see the poll on your screen. Request you to please vote. I see many have responded. Thank you everyone for responding.
Yeah, I think all responses have come in.
Okay. Raghav, shall I?
Go ahead, Rishita. Please show what are the results, what are the challenges being faced by these HR leaders.
Okay, up on your screen.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great. So let's talk about each of these challenges and let's try to cover them. So looking at the 4 areas, let's talk the first part of effective participation. Now, this is your pre-survey part. What you need to do is just take care of the top 4 points here. The first point is that the internal communication messaging needs to be done very strong. This is your base foundation. You need to make sure that your message is clearly conveyed to all the employees. Why you are doing, what is the survey, Why are you doing the survey? When is the survey going to happen? Who's going to do the survey? And how it is going to create an impact. 5 key essentials that needs to cover up. How you do it? Running emailers, flyers, banners in the organization, WhatsApp group messaging, and the best is town halls. You need to make sure that there are certain survey champions that are there in the organization, those who drive them out. I have always seen a success coming from the leaders and the HRBPs. Spoken with so many clients. If you have survey champions, they are the ones, those who keep passing the baton on, making sure that the maximum number of participation should come within the organization. Third is to optimize the survey timing. Make sure it's not the peak. You will definitely get effective. Initially, to make sure that it becomes an ongoing practice. And seeing that, yes, it attracts certain kind of increase in the participation. Let's look at the second challenge and how to resolve it in terms of insight strategies. How do you work on it is looking at these 5 very, very clear steps. Set very clear goals on what do you want to achieve out of your survey. Whether you want to identify pain points, whether you know the pain points, but you are not sure why they are happening, and so forth. To define the strategies, you need to have very crystal clear questions being asked. You can even relate these questions to KPI if you are doing a 360-degree feedback. But your questions needs to be very, very sharp language to make sure it's bullseye. No fake language or fictitious languages. It has to be very, very sharp language. Now, once you are getting that data, you need to segment that data. Now, these segmentations can be done depending on the kind of demographics you have. So whether you have corporate office, satellite offices, whether you have zones, whether you have international operations, India operations, whether you have different departments, you have genders, you even have age groups, you have tenure-wise cadres in the organization. You need to segment that data, plot that data using different AI tools. So that's your 4 point, using different AI analytical tools that are available. You can rely on Excel, which is good enough, but there are a lot of manual calculations that needs to be done in terms of formulas, and the probability of errors may happen. Similarly, there can be challenges with AI, which I will talk a little later. They are also prone to certain kind of errors. And the last is have comparisons and benchmarks. So you need to translate that data either on year comparisons between what males and females are saying in your organization. So you come to know how engaged these employees are. You can look at different benchmarks, and these benchmarks can either be on department wise, location wise, or it can be on an year basis. I will talk a little bit more, showing you a sample as we go ahead and if the time permits. One of the most interesting challenge is the management and administration. The easiest way to remove this is run your survey to the minimal time it is possible. Don't keep your surveys open for 15 days. I do not recommend that. Earlier, I spoke about it because clients do want to do that. Try to restrict the time. So what you do is you automate all your survey processes, use simple standardized questionnaires. You delegate surveys to your different champions, making sure that the communication is happening. You have a help desk, but keep this entire process as short as possible. Keep the timelines as short as possible, creating a sense of urgency for people. I have seen certain organizations where employees do get multiple surveys within a quarter. Don't do that. Don't create a survey fatigue for your employees. The last and the most important part is how do you link them to business? This is one of the most interesting area I find, and my target for next year is to actually help organizations with different business models on how you can relate your survey data, the output that comes, into your business impact. Now, how do you can link it? There are approximately 10-11 ways. I'm listing out the top 5 ways how you can do it. The first is having the measurement of productivity and performance in your organization. So is the operational efficiency or productivity being increased in the organization? For example, if you are a technology company and you still have a lot of projects which are pending, delivery is not happening, no matter how happy your employees are showing in the survey, there is some disconnect between the productivity and performance. This is one of the examples that I've taken, but there are a lot of examples related to productivity and performance that you can match with the survey score. You can actually look at the employee turnover and the associated costs related to hiring, training, and so forth. You need to also look at specific customer scores. So you may run a ESAT survey and see how happy your customers are. Are the customers sticking to the organization or not? And somewhere it has been clearly proved with a lot of studies coming from McKinsey, PwC, and Statistica that if your employees are happy, the productivity increases, there is a lower employee turnover, and the customers do get retained, helping business be more profitable. You can also look at very specific areas in terms of agility and responsiveness to market changes. So these are your pestle analysis in terms of changes in the world dynamics of political, economic, social, technology trends, and how effective your organization is in terms of innovation and problem solving. If you look at some of the new age firms like Facebook, Google, and WhatsApp, what are they trying to do? They're trying to make sure that their employees are happy, and they're trying to link it directly to innovation and problem solving. Because an employee is happy, they feel engaged, they would put their heart and soul in the organization, in the kind of work they do, and do not restrict them to a 9-to-5 job. I hope this answers. I will keep some time to make sure that I answer questions related to these 4 areas. Now, when we're solving these key challenges, one of the most important part that comes in is how can we use artificial intelligence, AI, chatbots, LLMs. The kind of work that I have been into in terms of organizational surveys and the way AI has come in the last 2 years, what I see is AI can be used in very, very specific 4 areas. And these are 4 broad areas. The first area is in terms of customizing your questionnaire. I'm keeping in mind, and this is my assumption, that you all have used ChatGPT. If you are using ChatGPT, which is a paid version, you can actually train them. And training them can help you generate your own questionnaire rather than you all becoming a content writer and writing questions. One of the most important things that I tell to anyone and everyone when it comes to AI is that AI is giving their first output as a hallucinated one. AI is always hallucinated. Your first prompt will never give you what you're looking for. Your 10th prompt will give you what you are looking for. You have to refine it. So if you're starting with AI, you want to create your own questionnaire, here is an example on how do you write your prompts. Now, this is something I'm giving you as an overview, but if you're writing a prompt, you need to define your organization. You need to tell the system, and there are different techniques of writing prompts. So you need to give a role to the AI. So you have to say something like, I want you to act as a survey design expert. You have to set up a very clear objective. So these are parameters which I'm not talking here because it would be a very, very detailed conversation. But you need to define your prompt very clearly, talking about what you're expecting, talk about your organization, what survey you are doing, what kind of English grade language you want, the number of questions you want, the themes you want, the kind of scale you want. And you can also add on very, very specific terms that you want the AI to use within your questions. For example, if you want to use term like culture, feed it. If you do not use the word salary and you use the word remuneration, feed it. Feeding all this information over a period of time while you are writing your prompts will give you a more efficient and effective output. So here is an example of how a verse to an efficient prompt would look like. This is the very first area talking about using AI. Now, once you've generated the questionnaire, you can use AI and specifically chatbots, which is nothing more than an application of a natural language processing to run your survey. My recommendation is do not try to do it with yourself with an AI. You need to set up an entire LLM for that so that all the data is stored somewhere and the LLM is quite trained to comprehend that data and give you very, very specific outputs. But there are a lot of organizations, those who are now building on chatbots for running surveys. These can be done through a mobile app. They can be done through links on WhatsApps and WhatsApp messaging and so forth. My only concern with a chatbot is that it is very good. It gives you a very, very personalized experience if you want to use. It is available 24/7. It is instant feedback. You are using your mobile, you get a pop-up, you answer the question, maybe a second follow-up question comes in and you are done. It also helps very, very efficiently in terms of analytics because everything is happening real time there and then. A lot of comparisons can happen instantly and so forth. Now, where the concern that I have comes in is on the maturity of the organization. Chatbots are very, very sophisticated applications. And running a chatbot may have certain challenges. There are precisely 5 challenges. I'm going to list down the top 3. The one and the foremost is the survey fatigue. Now, it's a mobile app that an employee downloads either on their computer or on their mobile. Now, because these are personalized conversations that happens, it's like a WhatsApp notification coming every now and then. And this is really difficult. One of the studies that came up from McKinsey, I have it in my play cards and I would be happy to talk about it. It is from EY that 23%, so EY did a survey out of which 23% people are resistant to change. They still want the traditional survey to come in or they want to talk to people one-on-one rather than talking to a chatbot. They feel that the reason for this, they feel that people understand the emotions and the sentiments more when they talk one-on-one rather than just filling up a chatbot survey. The second challenge what an organization may face are technical and cost limitations. Making a chatbot is very, very complicated. Defining the entire journey of a survey on a chatbot is very difficult. The more you customize the journey, you incur higher timelines and cost implications. Over and above, the last challenge is the misinterpretation. it's all NLP. How well the LLM is trained depends on the output that comes out. It is not going to be something like an MS Excel calculation where we do an NPS score. Here, there are a lot of subjective comments. The main question followed by a follow-up question, further subsequently followed by a follow-up question. There are challenges and there are potential threats in terms of misinterpretation if NLP and the LLM is not properly trained or trained over a period of time and refined. But this is what I feel, again, totally on an organization's maturity level and their employees' maturity level. Let's look at the second part after customizing the questionnaire on how you can use AI. Let's look at an individual development plan. You can actually do a 360-degree feedback using AI. Once you do your 360-degree feedback, you can actually go to ChatGPT, and I'm specifically using ChatGPT. You can use Claude, you can use Gemini, Copilot, and so forth. You can actually take all the reports, upload them, or take all the scores in an Excel file, upload them. Train the LLM in terms of what are the different goal setting areas you want. You can train the LLM in different dimensions that you want. All the quantitative and qualitative comments, when combined totally in totality, you can actually generate a development action plan. LLMs being open source, they can actually crawl and read out movies, books that they can recommend basis on the development action plan. Here you are looking at a very, very specific report that I've been working with a client where the individual development plan actually comes out as soon as a 360 report is generated. And it talks about what are the strength areas, what are the development areas, and for your development action plan, you use the 70-30, 70-20-10 model. So here it talks about what are the movies you can watch, what are the books you can read, what are the videos you can watch on YouTube. And if the sophistication is there in the organization, you can actually link your LLM with the courses that are available on your LMS. And you can actually assign courses to your employees. Similarly, you can monitor the progress and you can have specific reviews that come out. Keeping in mind, I'm going to rush a little bit in the next two parts. I'm not sure if I'll be able to show you a sample of what the data segmentation of the report looks like. But once you have all the data available, you can use AI in multiple outputs. You can actually create your own reports. You can upload the data, ask the AI with a very simple command that I want you to act as an expert data scientist with 10 years of experience, analyze the uploaded Excel file or CSV file and identify what are the key themes. AI will do it automatically. So you can use it for doing multiple report creations. You can actually create dashboards, which can be as your heat maps, your summarized findings. You can even actually ask an AI, after you have analyzed the data, please tell me what are the 3 top problem areas all males are facing. It will give you that output. Then you have to further refine it because that would be a hallucinated response. You can actually ask, okay, what are the dimensions where males are facing challenges? Then you can trickle down, okay, are these 3 challenges applicable to all age groups? The AI will tell you which is the age group that is facing those challenges and so forth. You can also collect data, historical data sets for your longevity in terms of having predictive insights. A lot of trends, patterns can be anticipated by AI. Beautifully done. I'll be happy to talk a little bit more on this at a later part. You can also collect all the subjective responses. This has to be very, very specifically done because when you upload the data, there are certain limitations. So in your organization, if it's 2,000 employees and you have 2 or 3 subjective questions, you have 6,000 comments. When you upload it, make sure it's a CSV file. Very classified columns are there. Data is quite clean. Don't use fancy formatting because AI doesn't concern any kind of fancy formatting. Keep it as simple as possible and upload it. You will find that basis your prompt, a lot of sentiment analysis and subjective comment analysis can come. Subjective comment analysis is nothing but where the open-ended feedback can be classified into clusters. I use a very, very unique proprietary tool I have of LLM. It is based on the entire sentiment and comment analysis. So what it does is automatically generate themes, what people are saying. It will tell you what percentage of people are saying what are the exact keywords that it has been counting. And you can actually train it to identify what are the themes that are there. No manual interventions. Everything is analyzed instantly within minutes. Whereas sentiment scoring is completely a different concept. Here, an emotional sentiment is calculated from a positive to negative on the open-ended comment. What happens is that there are algorithms that are there in LLM which can be defined, and it assigns a numerical score to the response basis on the intensity and polarity of how that emotion is coming out. If you write NA, it will not count anything. But if you use a word like there is poor leadership in the organization, it would identify it as a negative comment. So all the mixed comments and so forth can be done. The last is in terms of actionables. Once you upload a lot of data, you can actually use very, very targeted interventions. You can use very targeted models to actually see the correlations of things that you can do with this kind of data. So for example, if you are running an employee engagement score, voice of employee survey with about 35 questions, you can actually train your LLM in terms of a model like a Pearson correlation. And you can identify what are those two questions, and your heat map would be created. I'll be happy to talk a little bit more, showing the examples. At the moment, I want to take a pause. I want to check with my colleague Ishita and see how much time I have, whether should I show an example or should I show the models and so forth. Ishita, please.
I think we have exceeded the time a bit, but if people really want to have a quick look at that, moreover, we also had some questions waiting for us. So we can take some questions, and if those questions have something, a part of it covering there, we can take it up.
Wonderful. So I will take a pause here. Let's talk about the questions that are there. Ishita, please help me.
Questions? Yes. So before the questions start coming, just a note to you, Raghav, that Deepak and Nishant dropped in the chat box. They had another meeting. They had to join in, so they wanted to thank you for the insightful session. Okay. Questions. Anybody has any questions for Raghav?
Yeah, I'll ask my question. Go ahead, Vaishnavi, first you.
All right. First of all, thank you so much, Raghav, for that detailed, comprehensive explanation on organizational surveys and how that benefits everyone at large. My question is on the Likert scale. So we always have this tendency, I specifically used to have this tendency to lean towards the median value. So when there is, say a 5-point Likert scale, when I'm not very sure or when I really do not want to think too hard, I just go with the one that gives me neither agree nor disagree, or something that is somewhere in between in the Likert scale. Either say if it's a 5-point Likert scale, it could be a score of 3, or if it's a 7-point Likert scale, I would tend to be somewhere around 4, just to be on the safer side. I've seen this among other participants or other survey takers also. What is your suggestion to overcome this specific concern? Do you see this pattern because you've been doing a lot of surveys? Have you observed this hindering the impact, helping you come up with the correct insight? What is it that can be done as an expert on surveys?
Wonderful question, Vaishnavi, and this is very much true. This happens. If you're using the Likert scale, whether for voice of employees or for 360 or for onboarding, this happens. To be tactful, you can do two things. One, make sure there is a manual check on the neutral part. If anyone clicks on neutral, they get a pop-up box. Why are you saying neutral? Have you not experienced it? You don't have any specific challenge with that? You can do that kind of coding within the survey and customize it. The second way is remove neutral. Remove neutral. Don't have it. It creates a little pain in terms of calculations, but you can actually do that. These are two best ways to do it. You can have some kind of a incremental or an adaptive screen monitoring, where if a participant is doing more than 2 or 3 neutrals, you actually stop the survey for them and somebody from the HRBP team or the survey champion reaches out, but that just complicates the process. So either rely on the subjective comment that anytime who selects neutral, there is a pop-up box, please share your experience why you're choosing a neutral response. Or you completely remove the neutral part of it.
Yeah.
But then you have to be very careful, then you have to use not applicable.
Right. Got it. Thank you, Raghav.
Pleasure. Shanti, you had a question, please.
Yeah, Angeline came on video. I'm guessing she had a question.
I do have a query, and this is something that Raghav and I have spoken about. So I was just putting him on the spot, being a little mean. You see, like when it comes to surveys, and I'm going to take NPS here. So we are looking at the extremes, the promoters and detractors. But you see, usually, often enough, there is going to be quite a large of people who are non-participant, who have not responded at all. How do you account for them? Because you see, non-response is actually a very, very loud response. How do you actually go and put that into the math? And I know, Raghav, I'm being mean here.
No, you're not being mean. Thank you so much for this challenging question. And in fact, Angeline, I've been working with one of the clients, those who have faced this, who are facing now this issue. And I think the first step is to actually sit with the client and consult them and understand, why is this happening? Why is there a low participation? It can be that the organization is a promoter-driven organization, a family-oriented business, and any survey does not come as a business outcome or does not reflect any kind of change. So that's why there is a low participation. The second is, when are they doing the survey? And once the survey is done, is the actionables being trickled down to that end employee? So that's one of the points that very debatable, but to understand from an organization perspective that why there is a low participation, it has nothing to do with the NPS score. It is actually why there is a low participation. Thank you.
My question, Raghav, is on how people interpret questions. This happened in one of the organizations I was working earlier, and there were a series of questions. And when each leader got the report for their team, the team that reports into them, their pyramid. And when we were debunking all the numbers with the team, we could actually make out that people had understood the question very differently. So simple questions like, your leader supports you in your career development. Yeah. So who is the leader? My reporting manager, manager's manager, leaders in the organization. That was the confusion. Then it was the term support. What does support mean? And it meant different things to everyone. The term career development meant again different things to different people. For some, it will be like, please help and guide me. For others, you've not given me a promotion. It was as simple as that. So when there is so much subjectivity in the questions itself, how do you consolidate insights out of this subjectivity?
Great question, Shanti, and this comes to me many times. I would break down into 3-step methodology. The first step is the client needs to understand what is their objective. It has to be a very, very clear objective of what the survey they are doing. Now, the question that you mentioned, that shows it's a 360-degree feedback survey. So it has to be very, very clearly defined. Now, that's this first part. So that clear part comes in. The second is that the communication needs to be very clear. Now, if you're running this kind of language, you can actually do a group session with an executive coach for 360, have one session for about 3 to 4 hours, for only the leaders or the participants that are there, and then do another session with the same coach, completely different group, those who are the respondents. Tell them that this is going to happen for these people. You have to be unbiased. Unki aisi taisi mat karo, survey pe give honest feedback. There are terms that
this was not the leadership 360. This was the voice of employee that happened across the organization. There were several sections: engagement, happiness, leadership. Under leadership, this was one of the questions, and we were like, okay, it meant different things to different people. How do you even
correct,
figure out anything? That was our problem.
So then I would go on to the third step, Shanti here, and I'm very excited that this client faced this. It's all about the sharpening of the language. If your themes are not defined and those sub questions in each theme is not defined, that's where the problem comes in. Now, if they would have defined a theme like leadership and then asked these questions, and that's why
it was under leadership. It was under leadership, but people understood. So the question, it read, your leader supports you through your career development. That was the statement. Yeah, agree, disagree, strongly agree, strongly. So that was the scale. So scores came, and when we looked at it, we were like, okay, what nudged you to, what do you think could have contributed to this score? And people said, you support me, Shanti, but I don't get that kind of support from the business leader. I'm like, okay. The other person said, oh, you took business leader. I took Shanti as the response, So that was the people understood the term. Who is the leader was a confusion. The term support meant different things to different people. Support with regards to career development, for some it meant if you've given me a promotion, you're great. If you've not given me a promotion, you're not great. For some, support meant, are you training me, nudging me, guiding me, showing me the various opportunities, giving me opportunities to practice the skills I've learned. For some, it meant that. So the understanding, it's English, and people did not have the common understanding. How do you address that?
Great. Shanti, as I understand, an ex-organization conducting a voice of employee survey with a set of simplified English language had a challenge in this particular question in terms of support from their leadership. What they could have also done, and easiest way is to have a dimension of leadership and define 3 questions where they ask for support from their immediate manager and from the leadership. Have 2 questions.
Tightening, okay.
That would have been a much more easy and a simple way.
Wow. The survey was by McKinsey. It had 65 questions, and several of these questions were in this ambiguous bucket. I'm just imagining how many questions the employee would have to answer if we had to split based on the definition of the possible interpretation of every word. But I think that might be the only way out. I probably understand that too.
So you can do that. Now, it totally depends on the employees also, how they take it. Now, if I get these kind of questions talking about the support and from leadership, anyone who's above me in the hierarchy is my leader. I would have considered that, and support, I would cover it as a 360-degree approach, saying that are my problems being solved? Am I being heard? Am I being coached? My KPIs are there. Am I being asked on my appraisals? Am I being checked on my reviews? Is my performance being checked? So I take that as a support mechanism, and then I score it.
Yeah, I hope AI is able to solve for this people understanding English differently.
It can.
If it's possible.
It can. And the only recommendation I have is when you're defining these kind of questions, always tell AI what grade of English they want. You want the output to be in. That really helps. There's no use of using, and now ChatGPT 4.0 comes with Canva. So it can actually expand the language and shrink the language. It gives you the option whether it's a high school, it's a graduate, expert level, and so forth. So you can actually refine your language. You can use terms that I want very simple language. Most of my employees are based in India. They are not graduates, the average age group is like this, these are the common terms. So once you feed those information, the output that comes out automatically is easy to understand.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Do we have any other question?
I think we have Navjeet with us. I don't think he will have a question for you.
Never know.
Does he? Right. Okay.
Great. Wonderful. So I had a couple of things that I wanted to show specifically. I made a end-to-end employee engagement presentation on how different heat maps, different graphs can be translated. I also had a couple of models that are available. The 9-boxer model, there is a SARA model, Pearson correlation, and so forth. So I want to talk a little bit more, but it's all right at the moment.
We still have some time, Raghav. Go ahead.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Then let me go back and share my screen. So let me first move on to this part. Okay, I'll skip this. I want to check if everyone can see Voice of Employee report.
Yes.
Great. This is a sample on how simplified employee engagement or Voice of Employee report should look like. This report is usually designed and demonstrated or presented to the management team or the leadership team of an organization. This is the full version, can be also sliced and diced depending on the organizational structure, global presence, and so forth. But what it does is it gives you the entire overview of what this survey has been, when it started, how many questions, how many people participated, and so forth. It talks about the basic calculations that are being done in the survey so that for leaders, it's easy to digest and understand the information. Basis on all the quantitative and qualitative comments, you give an holistic overview of what is there, what is not there in terms of strength areas, in terms of focus areas, what are the tactical points, and so forth. Followed by a plan of action that, okay, these are the problem areas, what needs to be done, how it can be done, you can set timelines to it, and so forth. Followed by stats now. So this kind of a presentation is always divided into two parts. One is your numbers, talking about the black and white part of it, saying what is happening, what is not happening. This is the example that I was talking about where this particular organization on their leadership had a lower score compared to what the organizational engagement score was. So how you can make sure that actionables are there, step-by-step stages are there so that they reach the gap of this 5%. Further followed by your question-based on dimensions, what people are saying organization-wide, and then you start dividing it depending on whether it's a sales-driven organization, it's a section-driven organization, what kind of different zones you will have. So this is a very simple derived heat map on the responses. So on what dimension, what zone, what is the satisfaction, what people are saying. And the scale is starting from red to yellow to green. You can set up your midpoint. So this is how your charts looks like. And this can be also derived out of AI. So this is one example that I wanted to show and then wanted to talk about a little more on how you analyze this data. These are your question-wise analysis. So on every dimension, how many people are engaged and disengaged? So there are backend calculations that can be done on each question statement and what the organization-wise response have come. You can actually translate it in terms of engagement and disengaged scores. The second part of the presentation, which is reading the subjective comments. This is all automated. This is a word cloud, all automated, where you take all the subjective comments, upload them, and these AI-driven proprietary tools, they actually come out with the words. Better than AI words, what I recommend is doing the subjective comment analysis. So you upload all the data, and rather than talking about what are the keywords, you look at what are the themes that are coming out. And for each of the theme, you can actually have percentages or counts on what people are saying. So maximum people, when it talks about a positivity in an organization, they feel that our colleagues are supportive and the management is supportive. That's the highest part it has gone. Whereas if you look on the challenging areas, a lot of people are facing issues when it comes to work arrangements. And then you can actually drill down with the AI tool talking about what it is. So these are your subjective comments, which are part of clusters now. So these are just samples, may not make sense because these are screenshots, not authentic data. This is fictitious data, but that's how your AI tools can help you. When you use ChatGPT, it will have a different layout, but it can give you similar graphs, and then you can use your own presentation skills to color code and so forth. You can also ask AI to derive what are the top statements in terms of positive and negative. You can even ask dimensions at what kind of statements which are positive coming from more of males or females, coming from which zone, coming from which department. You can actually have count because AI actually can generate that in a tabular format easily, rather than we using formulas and of MS Excel and deriving and then manually checking them out. You can have top phrases that are being used in the organization. This can be a combination of both positive and negative. AI can actually do the sentiment analysis and tell you that a particular phrase is being used in a positive or a negative aspect. You can have the descriptions of these phrases and so forth. So this is how your analysis can be done. Now, using these kind of reports, you can actually, and I'm switching to my previous presentation. Kindly let me know if it is visible. Great. So you can use different models here. I've taken these top 5 models, globally used best models, Gallup being one of the best, Pearson being the second best, and Sarah model, the third one. Really best models that you can actually use and do a lot of interventions within the organization. As you're using AI, and I spoke about assessments, you can actually use a 9-boxer model. Let me give you an example on this. You can actually take a lot of psychometric scores of your current high potential people, or you can take it for your entire organization. You can actually have an engagement survey done, and you can take their current performance scores. And you can actually plot people in the landscape. So you can have your tenants, disengaged employees, champions, and captive employees. And everything has a definition. This is a model that came out somewhere in 2011 from Harvard Business Review. So except this, there are other models. These are 5 other models that are available in the market. People can use. These are open theories. I have not used them, but these are the models that are also available.
I've used some of these models for very different purposes. It just feels weird to see them, to see it can be also used for data analysis. Thank you.
Yes, it can be. Not manually, you need AI for this because the AI knows these models. You have to feed some information on the model. Then you actually take the data, upload the data, and then you can start deriving correlations out of it. So this is the presentation. What I understand, Shanti, you would be using these models for your coaching journeys, right? Yeah. So yes, you can easily do that with the AI model as well.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Shita, you want to wrap up the session?
Yes, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. Else we take a Friday off and plan for a relaxing weekend ahead. Ishita, want to check any questions?
Don't see any questions in the chat message. Vaishnavi, you switched on your camera. Do you have any question? Okay. I think we do not have any questions for you, Raghav. It was such a lovely session. More than a lovely session, it was more like a very insightful session to the things that were not really known to many of us. But thank you very much for enlightening us with all this information and knowledge coming from an expert, from an industry expert. And of course, I'm sure that it will help all of us to use this information within our organization for our organizational growth. Thank you so much, Raghav.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shanti, for giving me this opportunity. Ishita, thank you so much for that entire cooperation and patience with me to make this a successful webinar. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a great weekend.